welcome to the S.M.A.S.H Foundation S.M.A.S.H DB, virtual event. This is our official kickoff. I want to say thank you on behalf of the other co-founder, Cordell Moore Jr., for joining us today. This is, like I said, our official kickoff. We are basically just going to do like a virtual discussion, answer a few questions, provide a few resources. Basically, you know, a lot of times it's people need help, but they don't have the information or don't know where to find the information. So that's what we're here for. Our panel today is going to consist of a couple of our board members who have been survivors of domestic violence, and we have a couple of survivors that will be joining us shortly. We also have a representative from Haven that is supposed to join us shortly as well. Haven is the domestic violence shelter in Pontiac for anyone who is looking for assistance. We're looking for a way out. So let's get right to a portion of any donations that we collect in the month of October will be donated to Haven. So we have a few more. We have a few more weeks. You know, hopefully you guys find it in your hearts to make a donation. You can donate on our website, which is www.smashfoundation.org. You can also donate via PayPal or via GoFundMe. All right, so let's get to it. So first we have Carl.
Hello, ladies. How are you? Gentlemen, everyone that's watching, thank you so much for joining us.
And then we also have Tonisha.
Hola. ¿Cómo está?
All right. You can't see her, but we also have Tiffany, who is also on our board. She's our secretary.
Hi, viewers.
So she's going to be, you know, handling the questions in the background for us. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comments.
Speak up. It says we can't hear you, so speak
Slide
up.
up.
Yep.
Or you can
Project your voices, ladies.
Alrighty. Can y'all hear me now? Is that better? Is that better?
All right.
It's probably a little delay.
So sorry, we're a little cramped right now.
Working in close quarters.
Right, we're working in close quarters. You know, quarantined for the most part. This is a virtual audience. Nobody's here aside from us.
We've all been tested.
Yes, we've all been tested. Okay. All right. So let's just, you know, jump right into it. So the first question, you know, what is domestic violence? What was your experience and how did you overcome it? Were there signs such as a, you know, like a buildup, or was it just like one explosive moment that was the start to many others? And do you believe abusers show any potential warning signs? So just real quick, domestic violence is basically a pattern of coercive, controlling behavior that can include physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, or financial abuse, such as using money and financial tools to exert control. Some abusers are able to exert complete control over victims' every action without ever using violence, or only using subtle threats of violence. All types of abuse are devastating to victims. All right, so what was yours?
Just a brief overview. I've experienced domestic violence from a lot of different angles, mainly with one partner. Both started mentally, then it went into the emotional aspect, later ending in physical. As you can see, I'm here today as a survivor, but mainly it has several warning signs. So oftentimes you think that your partner is just trying to spend time with you or just trying to keep you off to himself. When they start to try to pull you away from family, when they try to pull you away from your friends, try to block people out of your circle, at the end of the day, I had to realize that he had an ulterior motive. And it wasn't until it got physical later on down the line that I realized that. I am blessed to say that it only happened once physically, but the emotional and the mental torture or the mental anguish that I experienced over the 7-year marriage was quite intense. And a lot of times when you're so involved with a person, you may become, I was so in love with him that, or what I thought was love, that I didn't even notice those signs. So when those close to me started pointing those signs out to me, the first thing I did was jump defensive. So we have to be open-minded and alert to those things that are coming towards us, so that in the end, we'll know how to move and how to maneuver away from those situations, not only to protect ourselves, but children, if there are children involved, and possibly even other family members. Also, listen to their family members. Don't just think that, oh, they just have an estranged relationship with their family. Their family is not around for a reason. And sometimes you have to hear both sides of the story before you just jump defensive and take sides with your partner. So that's just a brief overview of my experience, and I overcame that experience just by simply realizing that it wasn't what was best for me. It wasn't what was best for my children, and you have to move in silence sometimes. So I had to take the proper steps. I had to get away when he wasn't there. He had to come home to an empty house to realize that I wasn't coming back. And now we've overcome those obstacles, and we can actually have conversations, talk face to face without drama or unwarranted issues and arguments. But you have to know how to get away, and don't be afraid to ask for help or to talk about it with somebody. Realize that everybody is going to talk about you, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. So if you have somebody that you can kind of confide in that's willing to help you, if they talk about you the next day, let them talk about you the next day, as long as they're willing to help you in that moment. You know, and there are resources available. Sometimes talking to a perfect stranger and explaining your situation to a perfect stranger is easier than explaining it to somebody that you've known for 10 to 15 years, just to avoid the I told you so speech. So those are just a few of my pointers that I would give to anyone in that situation. And please understand that domestic violence, women are not the only victims of domestic violence. You have more men who are victims of domestic violence than you know, but because they're afraid that it's damaging their manhood, if they say anything, they kind of stray away. So you just want to keep your eyes open and always be willing to be that listening ear to somebody. As a survivor of domestic violence, it's really easy for me to hear other people's story and respond to it accordingly.
Thank you. I know it's kind of hard, you know, trying to follow up something like that. But just to touch on, you know, some of the things that T said. Some of the signs, you know, that they do tend to be there. He might insist on moving quickly into a relationship. He can be very charming, may seem too good to be true. They insist that you stop participating in your preferred leisure activities or spending time with family and friends. Like this, what you said, they try to isolate you, basically. They're extremely jealous or controlling. They don't take responsibility for their actions and blame others for everything that goes wrong. Or they criticize their partner's appearance and make frequent put-downs, which, like we said, emotional abuse is real as well. It's not just physical. So if you're experiencing any of those signs or things that make you say, because you can relate, like you just might be in a potential domestic violence situation. So, Tonisha, ma'am, would you like to share your experience as well?
I'm camera shy, but I was in a mental abusive relationship that lasted for almost 4 years with a narcissist male. A lot of those traits most definitely were in our relationship. It's so many I can actually touch on, but it was very draining. It was very emotional. I thought different of myself. My children, of course, played a big part into me finally taking a stand and walking away from the situation. But I did have to, unfortunately, lie to get out of my relationship for the safety of my family. But it's never an easy thing. But when you actually have a support system where you can express yourself and get the help that you need to get out, then at the end of the day, that's what pretty much matters.
All right, short, sweet, straight to the point. All right.
Still
All right. So, Carl brought up a good point. Domestic violence survivors aren't just, or victims aren't just women. They're men as well. You know, as men, society tends to, it's almost like you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. Like if you a man and you hit a woman back, self-defense or not, then you weak, you all types of stuff. If you're in a domestic violence situation and you don't do anything, you don't say anything, it's like you don't respond, then it's like, oh, you still weak. Like for men, it's like you can't win, you can't lose. So that brings me to the next segment I kind of want to go into. We can talk no more than about 10 minutes. I probably won't even take that long. So I don't know if you guys watch Marriage Boot Camp on the WE channel. So there was an incident with Tahiri and Vado, right? So for those who aren't familiar with the situation, who aren't familiar with the show. So in this particular situation, there was an instance where they were given an exercise where for every complaint or everything that one of the partners in the situation did wrong, they were given a list by the producers, and every time the person did something on that list, they were supposed to get shocked. Like they were wearing wristbands that would basically give them like a slight shock to say, okay, this is what you're doing that I have a problem with. The only issue was the person wearing the wristband, like they don't know what those issues were that their partners brought up, right? So you don't necessarily know what you're getting shocked for. Like you just know you're being your normal self and suddenly you feel a shock. You don't know why, right? So in this particular situation, Tahiri did one of those things on that list. She got shocked. She got mad. And she took her bracelet off because she didn't want to get shocked anymore. And it escalated from there. So they were talking about it later, and like Vado was basically just telling her like, yo, like you were doing, like I'm following exercise or whatever, like you were doing such and such, that's why you got shocked. So she picks up 2 big Granny Smith apples, right? One in each hand. Like they might have been maybe 6 feet apart. He's sitting at the kitchen table, sitting down. She's standing like next to him, maybe 2, like how we sitting, right? Mm-hmm. So like from like me to you, right? She picks up these 2 apples, and she literally says word for word, I will probably deserve to get shocked for what I'm about to do next. This is what I do. I do this all the time, blah, blah, blah. She then proceeds to like throw these apples in this man's face. She hits him in the temple, right? She hits him in the temple with 2 apples, right? So initially he don't respond. He just let it go, right? Nothing happens. So then, like when they were talking about it later in group therapy, she tries to deflect and make it seem like everything was his fault, and he's the reason why she acts this way. He was the reason why she threw the apples. Like oh, he does this, and then y'all see me. It makes you guys think that I'm crazy. Meanwhile, everybody in the house was like, well, no, you were just flat out wrong in this situation. So the issue with this situation was in how the producers of the show handled the situation. So Vado ends up being kicked out of the house. Tahiri gets to stay. But what's even more upsetting is Judge Toller and Dr. Ish, they basically baby Tahiri, like, oh, it's not your fault. I don't care what you did. It's never okay. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the part. So the part that got him kicked out of the house, actually. So during group, when she said, oh, it's his fault, he got me looking crazy. When she didn't take accountability, like he snapped, and he grabbed her by her. So it's debatable whether some people say he choked her out, some people say he like simply grabbed her by her jacket or whatever she had on, and that's when security reacted and they ended up putting him out the house, whatever the case may be. So it's like from that moment on, he was like the instant villain, like, oh, he was flat out wrong, blah blah blah. Now don't get me wrong, he was definitely wrong for putting his hands on her. Absolutely. However, it was the fact that in this instance, Tahiri, there was no consequences for her. Like, there was no accountability. Like, she never once said,
she hit him in the head with the apples, right?
Yes. Yes. She hit him in the head with the apples, like close range, like. And it was just like, everybody was just like, how can you not have any, how can you not have any consequences for Tahiri at this point? Like, you guys are telling her it's okay, no matter what you do, you can put your hands on a man and it's fine. He should never react, or he should never put his hands on you back, or whatever case may be. So my question basically is, do you feel like, or why is it that even when women physically initiate the altercation, that men are villainized while women are not held accountable? What message does that send to viewers?
So for me personally, I feel like we live in a double standard world.
Yes.
And regardless of size, regardless of actions, the man is always going to be held accountable, because they feel like even if a woman hits a man will be stronger, and a man can defend himself up against a woman. It's one of those things, just like to me, it's an oxymoron. I always use the example of relationships. So in society, it's okay for a man to be with two women, but it's not okay for a woman to be with two men. You know, we kind of look at that as, oh, well, he a pimp, look at him, he the man, he get all the props. But when a woman in turn turns around and do the same thing, she's called out of her name, she's a slut, or she's a whore, or she's doing those things. So it's the same thing when it comes to domestic violence. I feel like it doesn't make sense. For every action, there is always going to be an equal or greater reaction. For every action, be it positive or negative, there's always going to be consequences. Just like we tell our children, you do something, you're going to be punished for it. Regardless of sex, I feel like she should have been just as responsible. That's what brought to my attention. She hit him in the head with an apple. So technically, in a perfect world, when we raise our kids, if somebody hit you, you hit them back. So if she hit him in the head with an apple, his reaction should have been to hit her back. You know, but, oh no, he's being abusive, he shouldn't have put his hands on her. That's just me. You have to understand that she's just as responsible. She caused the scene. She aggravated him, or she pushed him to that level. And some people don't agree with me, and I mean, I take the bullet for it. I say it all the time. You have two types of women. You have some women who don't deserve to be abused, and you have some women who, take it or leave it, deserve to be hit sometimes, because they antagonize a man because they know that a man is not going to do it. So they're constantly doing things and pressuring him. If somebody keeps doing this and they keep pushing you over and over and over again, you tell them to stop, they don't, they continue, your instant reaction is going to be to pop them in the mouth. I can't get mad at you for that, because I'm telling you to stop and you won't. So in his defense, I don't feel like he should have received any consequences for his reaction, because he was literally trying to prove a point. He grabbed her, he moved her out the way. She wasn't injured, she wasn't bruised. She threw 2 apples that hit his head. Those apples thrown hard enough could have caused a possible concussion, could have knocked him unconscious temporarily. It could have not hit his forehead, hit him in the eye, caused him to lose his sight. There's so many things that could have transpired. So I feel like she needed to be held just as responsible as they want to hold him responsible for choking her up or moving her out the way. However you want to relay it, she needs to be held just as responsible.
I totally agree. And I do feel like that kind of, I feel like we live in this age where so many people, so many of these young people are looking at reality TV, and they're reality, and they feel like, oh, it's on TV, so that gotta be right, that gotta be how it's done, like this is how you act. And I feel like the lack of consequences for Tahiri just basically shows, even especially coming from Judge Toller, to me, it was kind of like y'all telling these young girls like, oh, it's okay, no matter what you do, it's never your fault.
They teach them how to play the victim.
Right, like you can do whatever you want, you're always right, he's always wrong. And to me, like that's it's not fair at all. You know what I'm saying? Like again, I'm not saying that Vado was wrong. I mean, you know, that he was right, I should say.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's never okay to put your hands on anybody. You know what I'm saying? Male versus female putting their hands on a man. It's never okay. But at the end of the day, I was also kind of raised like if you a woman and you big enough or you man enough to put your hands on a man,
Big enough to take
you're big enough to take them consequences. Period. You know what I'm saying? So,
and no, we are not encouraging you
right
to hit a man. We're not encouraging women or men to allow yourselves to be abused in any way, shape, or form. But we have to be mindful of the situations that we put ourselves in. I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there.
Facts.
I don't want people to misinterpret what we're saying. We're not in any way condoning domestic violence or abuse of any type. We're just saying that as women, we need to be mindful of the things that we do to men and the consequences associated with it. Anything to add, sir?
All right.
I just wanted to put that out there because people be misconstruing stuff.
That is true.
We all
That's
want
true. Okay, so let's kind of flip the script a little bit. So we all watch P-Valley, right? Y'all watch P-Valley?
Mississippi.
Right.
Crooked letter.
That's funny because that is exactly what I want to talk about right now, right?
Let's talk about it.
All right, so
Let's talk.
if we all saw the last, the season finale of P-Valley, right? When Diamond, so when Diamond finally decides to take up for Mississippi, right? He gets into a fight with Mississippi's abusive boyfriend. She been coming to work, black eyes, bruised, whatever the case may be. Right, we're giving the usual excuses. Oh, I fell down the stairs. Walked into the kitchen cabinet, all of that. So Diamond finally gets his hands on her boyfriend and they have a nice little fight at the club, right? So once Diamond gets to the point where he's really about to just finish dude, right? Mississippi pulls a gun on Diamond and sort of defends her boyfriend, like, get off him, don't hurt him, don't kill him, whatever Diamond was going to do, because we all know Diamond got his ways.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just interesting to me, like, this is a man who has put you through so much. He's always put his hands on you, and when someone finally comes to your aid, comes to your rescue, your abuser is the one that you're defending, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, have you ever defended your abuser from someone trying to protect you? And then why do victims sometimes return or stay with their abusers?
So, I can respond to that.
Okay.
I would have to say, have I ever defended him directly as a result of physical abuse? No. As a result of the mental or emotional abuse of pulling me away from my family or not coming around my family, yes, I always made excuses. Oh, he had to work, or he was tired, or he had something else that he had to do, only because I wanted to avoid them picking up on any additional signs and signals or anything that might draw more attention to me that could potentially pose an argument later. What was your second part of that question?
Why do victims sometimes return or stay with their abuser?
Victims, what I noticed, working in the mental health field for the past few years, a lot of times victims stay with their abusers out of fear. When a woman or a man, I'll talk universal here, is being abused, there's usually consequences for their actions. Sometimes they're out in public and that spouse is the perfect spouse in public. That spouse supports that person in everything that they do. And when they get home or on that ride home, that spouse then runs down a list of things that they didn't agree with that day. They run down a list of things they feel that the spouse did that was inappropriate or disrespectful to the relationship, which starts with an argument and could in turn return physical. A lot of times people don't understand, when you think physical abuse, you think literally, oh, walk up to me, hitting me, punching me, or doing some things that will bruise me externally. Just because a man tells you all these beautiful things while you're out in public, you get into your argument, you get in the house, and it's like things went away, and you engage in sexual intercourse. Abuse can come during sex as well, so we need to be mindful of all signs. There could be unwarranted choking. He could force himself on you. We look at that as rape to a degree, but if you agree to sex and then he pressures you into certain things during sex, you automatically agree to it. That's another form of sexual abuse. That can also fall under the terms of domestic violence. Unwarranted bruises during sex, things of that nature. So you have to be mindful. Abusers are crafty. And when they find out that you know their signs and signals, they know how to get you. So because I know as an individual, oh, well, she's connected to me sexually, I could talk down on her, I could say whatever I feel, but she'll think that I'm in love with her again and everything is beautiful when we engage in sex. That's their way of controlling you mentally. So being mindful of all that. So out of fear of losing that person has tainted your brain to the point where you feel like no other man or woman will ever love you. Everything that they do out of love. Those are all of the signs of why women stay. We all want to be loved. We're human. And if it's one thing that we want love from our spouse, we want love from our children, we want love from our parents. And sometimes women who end up in these relationships have daddy issues, have family issues, where they didn't get that love and treatment that they want or that they're yearning from their spouse. So they stay just for the companionship, whether good or bad.
Agreed.
Well, you talk first next time.
Right. Just to kind of piggyback off what you said, you know, you're absolutely right. A lot of times when it comes to, you know, why they stay, you know, or why they continue to be with this person, it's for, you know, several different reasons. Like you said, fear is a big one. It can be, you know, fear that they might, you know, get killed if they try to leave, or if they get caught trying to leave, I should say. A lot of times the victims even might feel guilty, which they call that gaslighting. Like they feel like they did something to cause this abuse. They did something to bring it on themselves. Like it's never their abuser's fault. It's always their fault. So they internalize the abuse. And even more what you said in terms of they don't want to be alone. Like it's the fear of not having someone. Like they would much rather stay in this relationship and endure the abuse, you know, than to have to say, oh, I'm single.
Or it's
Like
financial. They can't
right,
afford to leave.
or it's financial, like they can't afford to leave, which that can be a big one. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause it's like, well, if I leave, then what am I gonna do? Like, this is all I know. Like, what about my kid? Right? What about my kids? Like they're the breadwinner. Like, they have all the money. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any money. Like, I don't work. Like, how am I gonna support my family if I leave the primary, you know, breadwinner?
Or if they have children with their spouse, the first thing they think about is the effect that it'll have on the child.
Right.
And if I leave, what is my child going to think of me? How will my child react? And we fail to realize that sometimes when we have children involved in abusive relationships, sometimes the best thing that you can do for your child is to leave. Because it'll hurt or it'll damage your child more than it would damage you personally, and they'll have to end up dealing with that in the long run.
True. All right. So, okay. So moving on. Me personally, I've never been in a domestic violence relationship or situation, but I do have friends who were, you know, in domestic violence situations, and as you know, as the friend, like on the outside looking in, it's hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like this is the person. Like, this is your friend, somebody that you love and you care about, and it's like because you're able to see the pain, you're able to see the marks, and it's like, and when you know them, it's like, why? You know what I'm saying? So my next question is, how do you approach, handle / deal with someone that you suspect or know is in an abusive situation? Because you know a lot of times that don't shoot the messenger. You know what I'm saying? Like your friend or whoever, they'll get defensive. You know what I'm saying? Like they'll rather stop talking to you than stop dealing with this person. You know what I'm saying? So like, how do you, I guess, how would you basically, I guess, try to help them get out of the situation, help them see the light, or, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, how do you cope with, or even try to help them deal with it?
So from personal experience, I had a friend. And I say a friend, this friend was more like my sister. And we were thick as thieves from our early teenage years to present. She was in an abusive relationship. And of course, because I'm her friend, my first instinct was to point out the flaws in her spouse. That was the biggest mistake that I could have ever made. Why? Because she already knew what those flaws were. But if you recall earlier on in my statement, I stated, sometimes when you're involved in a relationship with an individual, someone from the outside can see everything that you can't see. So you'll be blinded by it. So it always caused friction in us, and it came off as if I was jealous of her relationship when that wasn't the case. So for me, my advice to any and everybody in that situation would be to be a friend. If she comes to you or he comes to you and they tell you about it, listen. If they ask you for advice, be mindful of the advice you give. The best thing you can say is, whatever your decision you make, I'm here to support you and I'm here to listen. Being that listening ear is almost the best friendship tool that you can use, only because you'll never have to worry about them saying you weren't there for me or you judged me, and be there to help them. To this day, if she called me, I'm running. I don't say, oh, I told you 25 years ago that he was this or he was that. It's going through these relationships, they have to see it for themselves. And so you don't want it to always look like you're pointing a finger or talking down on that relationship. So the best thing as a friend for me would be to listen and move accordingly.
I agree. Like it's a similar situation. Like somebody that I'm cool with, they were in a. It's been two. I've had two friends who are that I've known were in domestic violence situations. Mm-hmm. So remember when we first graduated, right? Remember, I don't say her name, yeah. But like I remember when y'all called me and y'all told me that he had put his hands on her or whatever. Like I'm in DC, I'm like I'm ready to hop on the road. I'm like I'm ready to come back. Like we about to go handle it, whatever. But it's like, for what? It didn't change anything. She stayed with him. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm more upset than she is. Right. And it's like how is that possible? You know what I'm saying? And I mean, eventually we know.
And love is a very powerful thing.
We can call it that, I guess.
I mean, it was their definition of love. It's what they thought love was.
True.
And love will most definitely have you blind.
Mm-hmm.
True. And like that situation just blew my mind. And then the other situation, it was kind of like when you're physically looking at these bruises that are on your friend, and it's like, dog, like. And then when they're asking you, like, what should I do? Or it's like you can tell them. You can tell them plenty of times, but it's up to them to listen.
And the best thing that you can do, instead of telling them, pack your stuff and leave, these are the resources. Mm-hmm. We have this facility is here for this facility is here for that, or go see a therapist. Number one thing that our generation and our community, the African American community, does is we run from therapy. Therapy is the best medicine, second to music. But therapy is the best thing that you can do. Sometimes sitting there talking to somebody and getting that off your chest is the best thing that you can do. We have to learn. These people are social workers and therapists. Keep us in business. We here for a reason. Social workers, therapists, counselors, life coaches, all of these individuals are here because they want to see you successful, not just for a check. They're here because they have a passion to be helpful and to see people succeed. So utilize those resources. So in addition to what you were saying, instead of giving advice, the best advice is go talk to somebody. Go talk to a professional. Right. Let them lead and guide you in that direction, because they can give you the safe route to lead, depending on how intense. They'll never tell you how intense the abuse is. Right. The abuser will never tell you how intense it is. They'll only tell you what they want you to know.
That's true. That was the crazy part for me. Like,
we got a mutual friend that was the same way.
Mm-hmm. Like, especially when it's a situation where they're not even like living in the same house. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, just
that's
why?
The easy way out.
That's right. To me, like that's more of the easy way out. But I guess when you're not in that situation, like you never really know what you would do if you were in that situation until you're actually in that situation. Mm-hmm. You know. Tanisha, you got anything to add? All right. So let's talk about something a little bit more, I would say, relative to what we're currently going through, which we are still in the middle of a pandemic. It might not seem like it because, everything's opening back up and, people out here I'm not gonna lie, we don't have masks on, but just in general, you know what I'm saying, people not wearing masks, they gathering in large crowds, like, it's like, everything, like, all of the precautions were just pretty much thrown out the window, right? So, but interesting fact, right? So COVID-19, has had a little effect on the level of domestic violence, right? So the Oakland County Sheriff's Office has reported that across 15 communities, the report calls for service are up. So compared to 170 in 2019, they received 178 calls just during the pandemic alone. So think about 178 calls in, well, we've been going through the pandemic since what, March?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they surpassed that for what they had the whole previous year. You know what I'm saying? There were 365 family trouble reports compared to 292 incidents the year before. In Detroit, there's been about an 8% drop in domestic violence cases, which we'll get to, I'll come back to that in a second, as to why that 8% drop has occurred. Turning Point, which is a 52-bed domestic shelter in Mount Clemens, their numbers have shot up in the past month, 25 to 30%. While calls to the crisis line are up, the shelter itself isn't full. So if you in a situation, you're close to the Turning Point, they do have availability for you.
Turning Point also offers transportation, so if you're unable to, if you need somewhere to go, they service outside of Macomb County, for one, so you don't have to be a Macomb County resident to go to Turning Point. Also, if you're in a domestic violence situation and you're unable to get away, you can call Turning Point, and Turning Point will send someone to pick you up. So that's not an excuse for you not to be able to get away. Those resources offer transportation to get you to safety, so you want to be mindful of that also.
All right. So let's see. Also, last one, calls into the hotline at the First Step Domestic Violence Shelter in Plymouth shot up about 30% between February and March alone. And they are a 45-bed facility, but they're currently full. So let's kind of go back to what I said about the drop in domestic violence cases. The suspicion is that, or not even suspicion, but the thinking is, because everybody is supposed to be quarantined together, sheltered in place, it's kind of hard to actually report the incidents as they occur, because you're actually in the same house with your abuser. You know, you can't, it's not as easy to sneak and call when they're at work or they step out to go to the store, whatever the case may be. So it says, gun violence has increased as well as threats involving weapons, including strangulation. Marital abuse and rape is on the rise, but not being reported to the police. So, like, that's kind of like you just hear the numbers and it's alarming. You know what I'm saying? Like, the cases have pretty much surpassed in a few months what they usually see in a year. You know, so like Takara said, there are shelters who, if you don't necessarily have transportation to get to them, they do have transportation to come get you. We will be posting different resources, shelters that have availability, people that you can speak to, just any resources that you may need if you are in that situation, think you might be in that situation, if you just need to talk to somebody to figure out your next move. We will have those posted on our website later today. And you can also email us if you want those sent directly to you. So like I said at the beginning, I can't stand you. Like I said at the beginning, S.M.A.S.H Foundation is currently collecting donations throughout the month of October. A portion of those donations will be donated to a local domestic violence organization, which I think we selected Haven in Pontiac, which is a domestic violence shelter. I think they're women. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're specifically for women, but we will also be posting some resources for any men that wanna, you know, possibly need help as well. So if you can, visit our website, www.smashfoundation.org. You can donate via GoFundMe, via PayPal. And we
Awesome.
will make sure that we get that money to the correct organization.
Also follow us on Instagram.
Instagram is _Foundation. Also, while we're here, so currently, if you guys are following us, we have not one but two families who are currently in need of assistance. Our first family had a electrical fire earlier in the week, which they pretty much lost everything. So we are currently taking donations, monetary or in-kind donations. The family is mainly asking for winter coats and boots. It's a single mother with 3 kids, and she also has custody of her 18-year-old sister living with her at the time. So that information, sizes, and everything can be found on our website as well.
All monetary donations and in-kind donations are tax exempt, so you can receive a tax letter for your taxes at the end of the year for all of your tax write-offs. So feel free. S.M.A.S.H is a 501c3 registered with the United States. What is it? Federal government, IRS.
The IRS, yes.
SLAM is here. But we
Right.
do have those letters available as well, so as you make those donations, please be mindful of that. If you need those letters, you can always email us. We'll make sure that you have those letters by the second week in January for tax purposes.
All right. And then the